And welcome back. I would like to talk today with you a little bit about how we can start getting a plan together for opening a file, walking through it line by line, doing maybe some internal processing of that using a data structure, we'll use a dictionary, and then maybe writing back to some other file. So where we left off the other day was looking at some of this with the Linux console, but I have actually created a database I'd like to look at. So this is just a list of songs. I'll probably make it a little bigger for you. So just some songs. This is actually posted on Moodle, but it's a list of artists, the number of views they have, a link to a video, and I would like to be able to kind of go through this and programmatically understand what's going on with this data. So I'm going to now look at this file we had, and this was the one I think, so I mentioned the object-oriented text file parsing with Python. So you can follow along with this. It's a PDF or a link, but I have our text file, and if you look at this, there are some lines that are intended just to be comments, and we'd like to ignore those, and then really just get these data lines to kind of break this apart into some of our fields. So looking here, really what we want to do is that we want to create an object, a class that's going to be able to accept these files and start working with it. So in this case, if you look, we have, I guess it's over there on that side. If you look, we have a class that we are making, and we have to have a constructor. This is when we first create the class. We make a new instance of it. We're going to pass it some option, in this case, file to open. And what it's going to do with that is it's going to make several internal variables for this particular object. So this is a form of object-oriented programming. We're having a class, and it has some internal properties. This object or class has properties that are specific to itself, its instance, and then it's going to be modifying those later on. So it's a type of a data structure. So in our case, we have the initial constructor. It's called underscore init. Those underscores are important. So we're going to pass it the file that we would like to open. In that case, it's going to be this database file. It's going to set that to something internally called self.inFileName. Now, the self is coming from this object, refers to this particular instance, because in object-oriented programming, it's really a bundle of like or similar things, just a way to think about it. We have this object is going to parse our database of text songs or whatever. So when we call this self, that's referring to this one particular instance as opposed to some other instance of the same class. It's kind of like a variable type, but we can have a variable that's a certain type, but it also has particular properties to its own instance and not shared with the other variables. That's kind of what's going on. So we have our file name. We're going to go ahead and open that file for reading access. That's what the R is for. And we're going to just initialize some variables, the current line, the number of lines, and because we want to store everything into a dictionary, we are going to go ahead and initialize that. And we're going to leave it out of debug mode. I have placed the entire Python file also on Moodle if you want to look at that, so by all means follow along with the pure Python file. I'm going to go through the HTML file and when I talk through it. So our class is going to have several other methods. What we'd like to do is that we want to parse. And when I say parse, I mean go through line by line of our text database file that we had before. We want to go through each line, and when we get to a line, we want to then do something with that line, parse it, take it apart, store the internal parts of the data, and then keep going to the next line. The plan for that is going to be, we are going to create this parse method. It does have to have a reference to itself because this is referring to it's going to operate on its own variables and not variables shared with other instances. That's just part of object-oriented programming. We call parse, and what we're going to do is for each and every line in this object's file, for line of self.f, we want to set the current line to be equal to whatever line we are on the file. We want to clean that line, get rid of white space and other comments for it maybe or anything else. Then we want to go ahead and advance. And in the advance portion, that's what we're going to do with some of the data processing. Once we're done with advance, we then go back to the top and go to the next line. So that way we're essentially going to walk through every line of the file one at a time. The clean line function, that is there to remove line endings, new lines, white space at the beginning, just stuff that we don't want. That way, maybe if someone has extra spaces at the beginning or at the end or something like that, we can get rid of it. So in clean line, we are calling current line, that's the line of text. We're calling the strip function, and that's going to remove line endings. Next, we want to remove comments. So to do that, we're going to split a line of text at the hash mark, octothorpe, whatever you want to call it, the comment symbol. There we go. We're going to split the line of text there. And what we want to do is keep the leftmost part. So if we look over here at a line of text, let's do this with a comment. So if we split at this particular symbol, well, then we have the first half. It splits it into a list. The first part, that's the 0th element of the list. We have what we're splitting at, and we have the next element of the list. So in essence, we have two elements, and we want to keep the leftmost no element. Keep the leftmost element. There, throw away the end, because we don't care about the comment. We only want to keep the data over here up to the comment. So split the current line at the hash mark, keep the left side of it, and then call strip on that, just to get rid of all the white space. All right. So we're not going to remove any other spaces because those might be important to us. In this case, they are, because an artist can have names, but you might care about removing all spaces, and you could then have string functions that do that. Either way, we clean the line, and then we're going to take the line that we've been dealing with, so this line variable, assign that back into the current line. And if you look back, we've now set the line to be the current line, called our clean line to kind of get rid of comments or anything else, and gone to advance. So now let's look at that method. The advance is responsible for saying the next line of code. This was invoked from the parser routine. So what we do in advance, we check to see if we even have anything left in our text line, because it could have been a comment at the beginning and we've removed all that comment and now we have nothing left. And if that's the case, we're done, nothing else to do. Otherwise, in our case, if it is a valid line, we just want to call the store data method to store the data in that line. We have a valid line, put that into our dictionary. You can do lots of other processing here, but that's good so far. So, when we created this object, we initialized the object by opening our file. We've started walking line by line. For every single line, we set the current line equal to that line of text. We clean it, we remove comments, and now we're calling advance, and we are now putting that into our store data function. Good so far? Hope so. Store data. This takes a line of known data and kind of breaks it apart into the field and stores that into our dictionary. So this is where it's going to be very dependent on what you're doing. For instance, if you're writing an assembler, you might want to break apart a command into its different fields and then do something with that, convert it to binary. If it's an A command, you want to do something else. If it's a high-level line of C code, you're going to want to, or Python or whatever, you're going to run a parser on that and understand the syntax. For us, we know the syntax. It's a person, number of views, and a link to the video, I believe. So we are going to split the line at the semicolon because if we go back to our example, here we go, Mario, number of views, link, there's a semicolon that's kind of separating these fields. So that's what we're going to do. Split that at every semicolon, and we're going to assign that into artist, views, and link. So that will split it and assign those three fields into the variables. Then we're going to call strip. There's going to be a lot of stripping in this. Removing new line characters, getting rid of that, just because it can mess you up. Remove all the extra end-of-line characters and spaces. We want to convert the views, which is a text field. We want to convert that into a number. So we're going to convert it to an integer. And then we're going to clean the link. And there's a debugging thing, but we're not using. So now we have name of the artist, an integer of the views, and the link as a string. And we can now put those in a dictionary. So this last part is just if artist is not in our internal class dictionary, which the first time we encounter a new artist it wouldn't be, then we're going to add it. So this is just standard things for operating with a dictionary. We're going to put it into a dictionary. The key is the artist. The first item here is the number of times they have appeared in the file. Second is the number of views. Third is the link, and these just come from this line of code. So that we're going to go through that for every line. However, if the artist is in the dictionary, meaning higher up in the file, we have already encountered this artist, we want to then tell that to our internal dictionary. So we get the old data from the dictionary. So the number of times this artist has been seen already, the number of views they have already stored in a dictionary, and the old link. So what we want to do is then we're going to take that data, combine it with what we currently know for the current line of text, and put that back into the dictionary. So back into the dictionary we go. We increment the number of entries. So entries plus 1. We combine the old views with the current views for this video we're looking at, and we're just going to go and replace the last link we've seen. Not a big deal. All right. So if we go back up and go scroll here, our parse class will take a current line, clean it, call advance. Advance will then call store data, and so then for every line of code we might be storing that data, and then from there, after we have done all of that, we're ready to write data. So let's say we're done parsing. We have this internal structure. We want to now write this back to the output. And of course, you don't have to do it this way and store it all in memory. You could, for some of the assembling, you might be able to parse it and then get it into the dictionary, whatever you need, and then immediately write that line of text to a file and then keep going. In our case, we're going to parse the whole file. Once we're done parsing, we are then going to take our internal stored values and write that to a file. So to write to a file, I am going to write to the name of my file, but I want to replace the .txt with .csv for comma separated values. I am going to call a sorting dictionary function because I want to sort my dictionary and take this database I have of text and write it such that the artist with the most views is listed first, and then it's in descending number of views. So I've sorted my internal dictionary, then I can write it. So writing is done by, I'm going to use a with block. With open the file, the CSV file for write access as f. I then say f.write, and I'm going to tell it the top line how you interpret this, though it's like an Excel sheet. The field names, artist, entries, views, and a link. I do need to include my new line character here so that we'll go to the next line. Otherwise, it will just keep running it one after the other, and that's not what we want. Now I'm going to walk through my sorted dictionary. So I'm going to say for key comma value in my dictionary. I'm going to separate that value, which is right now a tuple with 3 elements, into entries, views, and link. So I kind of just break that apart again. And then I get the line I want to write. I'm using f string, so I'm going to do the key, which is the artist name, the entries, number of times we seen it in the file, total number of views, and the last link we have. And I'm going to write that line out plus a new line character, and then I am complete. If you care, I do have my sorted dictionary function. This is probably not that important for this class and for 431, but just an example of doing processing on a data structure. You can kind of do anything you want. In this case, I'm just sorting it by number of views in descending order. Don't worry too much, it works. So, total program. I have this whole class. It's a single class. I've called it a parser class. And so when I initialize the parser class, I pass it the file I want to open, my source file. In this case, it's a database. It sets internal variables. And then I'm done. Then what I want to do is say parser.parse. It will then initiate the parser function, run through every line of the file, getting that into the dictionary, and then I can ask it to write. So here's the write. I call parser.write, and it will then write everything to the CSV file, and I'm done. So the last step here is to tie all this together, and I'm going to create a new function called main, and this is what I want to run. So in this case, I'm not using command line arguments. You can use the previous lesson about command line arguments and make this work with any database, which is a much better thing to do. I'm just going to hard code it for now while I'm testing. So the file I want to do, which you would usually get from the command line, is called file. I want to take the parser class I've made, I want to pass it this file so that it can initialize that and begin using that. So this is the name of the class. This is the file I want to open. And I'm going to create that. I'm assigning that to a variable named myParser, because we could have multiple parser objects on multiple different files, but I just want this one. So then I can now call functions from myParser. So in this case, I'm going to set the debug flag to true because it was initially initialized to false. I'm setting it to true so I can get some more debugging information. You don't have to do that, but you can set these class variables outside of the class. I then call parser.parse that will walk through the file, get everything into the database that I want, like the internal dictionary. Then I call myparser.write. So really, if you just look at the main code, it's pretty simple. All the magic happens in how it's organized in the different functions that kind of call each other. We could make a graph and start drawing. This is the parser object. It contains the advance function, and that will then call the clean line function. And then once it's done, it's going to call another function. We could kind of look at like a big tree, and you can think about it that way. It is very helpful, but I'm going to have to right now. And then the last line is this magic I told you. If the name is equal to main, then I just want to run the main function. Just, again, get used to that. So we have our output. Let me get rid of myself for a second. We have our output, and I can run the Python file. Whoops, there we go. And after I run it, this is what I would get. This is my comma separated value file. Artist, entries, views, and links. So it's just the fields followed by the number of times they're seen, followed by the number of views they have. You can open it up in Excel too, it would work as well. But if we go back, we can see what it looks like, and this is now correctly sorted by descending number of views. And then, for instance, we have some that are seen more times in the file. So this whole Python file is posted. It's worth looking at. It's an example of getting this object-oriented structure, passing it a file, which we want to do by command line interface. We should work on integrating those two ideas. And you can start handling that and is happy to output its value. So there you go. Object-oriented text processing. That's going to be a big idea for the class. I want to make sure you can handle that. Thank you.